Callie, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cup of coffee, so I'm always well with cup of coffee.
It's a good start to the day for sure. So, you live in America, yet you are very passionate about the English country home. So, I want to
Mhm.
ask, what is it that appeals to you about it? Like, paint a picture. I always love talking about kind of creative things on a podcast because it really forces us to kind of illustrate them and people can imagine kind of what we're talking about as well. So, what is it that really pulls at your heartstrings that you're like, I love this?
I feel like in some kind of a past life, I must have lived, obviously, I am mostly English and Irish by descent. And I feel like in a past life, I must have been over there, just born in the wrong generation. But from birth, I've always loved being outside, gardening, animals. I've ridden horses since I was like 4 years old. We actually just got a new baby goat yesterday on our farm. So, but really, I never thought about decorating my house in an English country style until you kind of go through, I feel like, your teenage years, right? You kind of muddle around and you watch HGTV or home decor shows and you're kind of sold this, oh, this is what my house is supposed to look like. And it's not until you get through those ickier teenage years that you start to realize that your home is a reflection of you and what you love and your passions. And so when my husband and I moved into this in America, we have these, McMansions where you are on a smaller piece of property right outside of New York City. And they kind of put up these big homes and they have no character. They just look like they've been put up on out of whatever. And I think that the lack of using an architect and builders just wanting to go right to work, kind of you have this hodgepodge of styles that don't mix. So when we moved into our new and current home, I was really looking for identifying factors that not only would mesh with who I was as a person, but really try to give our house some character. And so when you look around, you see a lot of Georgian moldings, you see a lot of columns that you would see in English estates, large ceilings. And so I kind of was like, like, what could we do with this? How could we give this home an identity? And on top of that, with my kind of passion for farm and for horses and countryside, it all kind of just melded together into one beautiful little package. So I've brought somehow the English countryside into my American home outside of New York City.
Which is an incredible feat to have done so stylishly and so effectively as you have done. And it's an interesting concept because I never really like considered that. Like, every country has their own kind of style of interiors and things
Sure.
like that. But you can
Right.
adopt what you like and bring it to wherever you live. But I think if you asked your average person, okay, so what
Right.
style of interiors do you like? Then they would probably be a bit, oh, I don't know, light,
Yeah.
like maybe airy, like they don't really know. So how
Right.
is your process to discovering, okay, this is what I like, this is my vision, and this
Yeah.
is what I want?
I think that I think as Americans, right, we try to cling to whatever kind of pieces of history we can, right? We're very jealous that you guys have such a long and deep history and ours is so new and so nothing, right? We go to George Washington and some colonial times, but we really, that's where we end. And so my husband and I love antiques and we love historical objects and reading about history, learning about history. And so I think honestly, one of the turning points for us was starting to, as I think we got married very young at 25, and we went to an antique store and we found this beautiful little console table that we still have with us. And I just loved the idea that somebody had had that in their family for generations and it had some semblance of heritage to it. And, then it kind of started with an antique painting. And I think that really, ironically, we were pushed through COVID because I'm not sure how it was in the UK, but for us, we were not able to buy any furniture here. All of the manufacturers shut down, but we were still living life to an effect, right? We were still buying homes, still decorating homes, and there was nothing to be had. And I think coupled with the idea of Facebook Marketplace really expanding and becoming more user accessible, because really all we had was Craigslist or antique stores, right? And antique stores, it's been marked up and marked up. And now with online auctions, things are more accessible. So we started kind of gathering these pieces of furniture. And I'll never forget, my husband, when we bought this house right after COVID. So we were trying to decorate this home during COVID. And we found this great couch on Facebook Marketplace for free. And it had retailed for like a couple $1,000 US dollars. And I looked at my husband. I'm like, oh, no, I cannot sit on that couch. Like, who knows what somebody was doing on that couch? But I'm like, you know what? Hang on a second. It has, it's a great bones. It's got a great pattern, and we're getting it for free. Like, and we can actually start to decorate this room regardless of, manufacturers being shut down. And I think that our love of antiques and history and this kind of inner desire to create something that was not like everybody else's stereotypical. And listen, I love Joanna Gaines, and the farmhouse movement is great, but we wanted farmhouse to look a little different. And I think when you look to the English and the Irish countryside, that spoke to us a little bit more. I mean, I love French country as well, but it's a little bit more girly, and it's not quite what my husband and I, listen, we love it. But again, we went with a combination of our passions for farming, for antiques, for historical kind of desire, and then put that all together. And ironically, the bones of our house matched just that. So we've tried to create our own little historical, egg in America.
I love that.
Nest.
Yeah, but also you have to like realize, okay, what do you like? What is the interior that you would like to have? You need to source the items, but also you need to have a house that will have the proportions to actually work.
Right.
If you have somewhere with quite small ceilings and not a lot of natural light, and you fill it with a lot of dark antiques, it'll feel cluttered. It'll feel like a tight space. But as you say, you have your high ceilings, you've got your natural light, and it works in like a setting that really they were designed to be in.
Right. And it's funny because people are like, well, I couldn't do this in my home. And I think to myself, well, if I had moved into like a Cape Cod house or something that was like a little bit more cottage-like, it would, my interests and my love for antiques would be there, but it wouldn't look quite so grand as we have it now. You have to play with the features of your home as well as your passions, right? They have to kind of coincide, or you're not going to get a cohesive look. It's going to look silly to think that you could have these grand gallery walls if you're in a smaller living room that's cozy. It's not meant to be. So you have to put your passions as well as what your house is giving you and try to meld it the best you can that would create a cohesive story.
And if someone's thinking, like listening to this and thinking, okay, that's great, I get that, but I've absolutely no idea what I like. What are my passions for interiors? Do you have any tips on how people could kind of figure that out?
I would say, how do you spend your weekends? When you have time off from work and you have nothing to do, where do you find yourself going? Are you going into nature? Are you in museums? What do you like to do? Do you spend time with family? And if that's the case, where are your natural instincts bringing you? And start from there. Start little. If you're finding yourself in a modern art museum and looking at modern art, well, that might be your first clue that you're drawn to that, and that, like, I had a quote online and I loved it, and I can't remember who the author was, but it's, you should walk into your home, and within the first like 10 seconds of being in your home, I should know a lot about who you are. And I want to say this delicately because listen, everybody has their own tastes, and interior decor is for sure an art, right? But my personal art is that it should tell a story of who you are. And it just drives me crazy when I walk into a lot of my friends' homes and they all look the same. I think that there has to be some small ability to take a risk and to want to take, to put yourself out there in your home decor as well, and not have it be gray and look like it just fell out of a catalog, because that's not you. That's not lived in. That's not, put your passions out there, whatever they may be.
But I also think another difficulty, and a very expensive difficulty, is when people hop on the trends for interiors. It's not like you've just bought, a few pieces of clothing. If you're buying your
Hmm.
sofa, which is a big investment piece, if you're
Hmm.
painting your walls, if you're doing everything in a certain trend, obviously we've kind of had the beige trend, like the taupe kind of era, and
Hmm.
perhaps it's moving on, and then people are thinking, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, I've just spent weeks of my life and thousands of pounds to create this look in my house. Whereas if you
Right.
actually tap into something that you feel passionate about, that not only does it tell a story, but it also makes you feel at home. It makes you feel most
Yeah.
comfortable.
That's the essence of home, right? And, I always think that there is no wrong move, that if you're not sure, like, look back into history. Now, you don't have to look into the 1700s. Certainly you can look back into like a mid-century modern, and, if are you drawn to that kind of era, and you'll see, interior decor and design has a whole beautiful long history. And I think one of my favorite moments that I learned about when I went to a design course was that a lot of Versailles was actually designed off of finding Pompeii. That was the oldest architectural discovery that they found, and so they used a lot of the things that they found at Pompeii to decorate parts of parts of the palace. And I just thought it was fascinating that that was their first discovery of historic architecture, right? That we know of. And so I never think that it's wrong to look back and find in history things that you love. I think the misstep is buying what's now, because you don't want to turn around and have your house being like, yep, that was a 2010s kitchen, it's all white. And listen, I did the all white thing too. I can't say that I'm not a victim of the all white kitchen. Before we moved to this house, I had an all white kitchen. And I think that that's the big thing, is that you have to be not scared to take a couple of risks. And I try to stay away from Pinterest. I try to stay away from the home TV shows, just because I don't want to see it. I want to just go back to the history books and try to figure out, like, what do kitchens look like in the 1800s? Granted, very rustic, but how can we kind of create that comfort level in my own home?
Yeah,
And necessarily it doesn't have to be so far back, but maybe it's a cool 1950s kitchen, something retro. It's just something that doesn't look trendy. I don't like trends.
exactly. But also, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, but I love my all white kitchen, it is the
Yeah.
best thing. I could have it for the rest of my life and I would be thrilled.
Hmm.
Then that's
Hmm.
absolutely the kitchen for
100%.
you. It's I think
100%.
that your example of art, a lot of artists, and this goes into architecture, you're taking
Right.
inspiration from lots of different things, different places, different views, and you're putting it all into one to create your own masterpiece. So your house in
Yes.
essence is your masterpiece. You're taking lots of little
100%.
things from lots of different places and creating this thing that reflects you. And it's pretty cool when you think about it like that.
I think that the biggest misstep is, have the all white kitchen. If you love the all white, if you love the clean look, have the all white kitchen. But I think the biggest misstep is being afraid to put small bits of your personality in there, like hang your kids' artwork up, or, put a little family portrait in there somewhere, even if it's in a very clean, modern black and white frame, put little bits of you within that. Just don't make your kitchen look like a showroom. Find ways to make your all white kitchen you. And I think that that is never wrong, right? So while you try to stay away from trends, it's okay to love a trend. Listen, we're all at some point wearing or being in some small trend, but make sure that your personality is in there, right? That's the key.
Absolutely, exactly. And then talking about unique pieces and unique parts
Mhm.
of interior design decor, you have the most incredible hand painted walls in your dining room. So I just would love to hear the process. Firstly, the thought behind it, and also
Mhm.
like you've got an amazing kind of saga of photos that shows the
Yeah.
kind of the process behind it. And
Yeah.
who did it? And also, where was your design? How long did it take? I want to know. I want to know it all.
So my husband and I went on a historic tour a long time ago, and we saw a dining room that had this gorgeous mural. And we've always had it in the back of our heads that we would love to have a dining room that was fit for a mural. Now, I look like I live in this big fancy house, but I'm sure not, New York is not as expensive as London, but you know that the suburbs, it is very expensive to live outside of New York City. And we got this house for a steal. We're kind of like low key bargain hunters, right? So when we went to go decorate this house, you know, there are budget constraints. And that's a lot, again, of the secondhand push. And why English country decor kind of fits into this, because you have generational things being handed down, and it is budget friendly to a degree. So when we looked at the dining room and we started to curate it and bring it together, I wanted that mural so bad, so bad. And every which way I turned, you know, I only thought of wallpaper, right? Like, you have different companies that will hand draw panel by panel wallpaper to create a mural scene. And I reached out to probably 20 name brand stores, online, Etsy. I mean, I was talking to people in Australia who are creating these wallpaper panels, and it all was coming in well over $10,000 American dollars for, you know, the scene. And we're only talking half a wall because I have chair molding on the bottom half. So I looked at my husband and I'm like, you know, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if we can afford putting a $10,000 mural in our dining room. And so I kind of just sat there and I'm like, well, what if we tried like an artist? Like, what if maybe it would be cheaper? I doubt it, but let's ask, right? Doesn't hurt to ask. So I reached out to a local artist that I had found on Facebook, and she was listed in some of the other moms groups that people had hired her to do like kids murals in their bedrooms. And she didn't have a huge portfolio, but I liked what I saw, and I thought that she looked very talented. I hadn't seen her do a dining room though. And she actually focuses a lot on churches and doing a lot of church murals in churches. And so I brought her in and I said, listen, I like this aesthetic. I am very much drawn to the English countryside. If I could be Jane Austen, I would. Like, you know, I think that it's wonderful. And I really am drawn to bucolic country scenes from the 1700s in like an oil medium. And I said, how much do you think that's going to cost to do the whole thing? And she looked at me and she's like, I don't think it's going to be as bad as you think. She goes, let me go home. Let me draw you up something. And I said, okay. So she took measurements and she went home and she came back to me a week later with these mural watercolors. And she put them down on the table in our dining room. And she goes, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I was like, oh, she nailed it. She nailed it. And then I looked at it and I'm like, I don't want to offend the artist because she's, you know, that's her artwork and this is what she's presenting me. But having ridden in some fox hunts and some, you know, clubs that we have here, I'm like, I know there are some things that are not super accurate, or like we wouldn't have this many horses running this way and they wouldn't be going in this direction. And I asked her, I said, could we edit this just a little bit, you know, that it's not so busy? And she's like, absolutely, I'm open to whatever you want. And I said, you know, another part, I was like, do you mind if we put something else like that you might see riding in the countryside? Like, I know that I've ridden past cow pastures and sheep pastures when we're on a hunt. And she's like, yeah, we can do that. So working panel by panel, we kind of edited down and then added things that she thought I would like. What's ironic is that there are little pieces that she put into the mural that I didn't even like. She put the fox in one corner of the dining room, which I thought was so cute. And I didn't even know that was coming. And so it took her about 2 weeks. We had to start with a clean slate. She wanted like a creamy, warm white wall. So we had it repainted. It had to dry and cure for a couple weeks. And then she came in and she started working and she got to work. And again, it took about 2 weeks and she used an oil medium. And I just think it turned out spectacular. And I feel like everyone wants to know how much did it cost, right? If we were looking at wallpaper that was 10,000, 11,000, one actually quoted me 20, you know, $12,500. This came in around 5,000. So it was half the price, more than half the price.
Incredible. And you got beautiful artwork that means so much to you.
Yeah.
It's original
Yeah.
artwork. You can edit it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, incredible.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's my favorite room in the whole house. It really is, because you just are transported to, you know, and so we've had in America, we've had Thanksgiving dinners there. We've had, you know, Christmas dinners there. It's been a really fun, entertaining room. We actually throw a big Kentucky Derby party. And so all of the food is there for the big horse races and, you know, the Triple Crown in America. So it's really been my favorite room in the whole house. As much as I love these gallery walls and the kitchen and everything, I love that we have our own little custom piece of artwork that was original to us that we left, that we put into this house.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the joy of taking a bit of time, figuring out what you want and how to do it best and how suits you, because then you get something so special that, it's your favorite room in the house because you've taken that step back, you've invested in it, you've taken time to do it. And yeah, that's amazing just how, with a bit of planning, you can really create something that you really love long term on the wall.
And I think that it's important for people. I think that, listen, I fell victim to it too. This was not the first house that we redecorated. But I think it's the time. I think that if I had rushed through the process of dining room, living room, got to get to my kitchen, it wouldn't have been the same story. I think that by taking time and saying, it's okay if it takes me a year to curate this living room. It's okay if it takes me, if I haven't decided on the wallpaper. And we actually were this close to purchasing a wallpaper, but I didn't love it. It wasn't exactly what I wanted. And we had the quote from the wallpaper hanger, and something stopped me, and I'm just like, let's try something else, because it's not something I overly love. And I'm so glad we took the time to just kind of think about it, because there isn't a rush when you plan to be here and have grandkids here, hopefully, God willing.
Amazing. Yeah, exactly. And you've got a home that will last you now, and you've got the lovely decor that you will really have just in your heart, and you'll love that. So that's amazing. And the joy, I guess, then is you can update things as you go. And you mentioned there that you love to thrift shop. You love antiques. So I feel like people are kind of understanding. It's almost been a cycle, isn't it? People were very much buying new, but now people are getting more into the buying secondhand, buying antique pieces again. They're coming back more into, I don't know, not into fashion necessarily, but people are aware of it and the lovely pieces that you can get, and also the quality. I think is something that people really love to see. Just things that last so much longer. Like IKEA is amazing, we all love it, but goodness me, sometimes you just want something that you can shut the door and it's just going to sit. So I want to know your tips for people if they're thinking, I'm going to thrift shop, but where do I go? What do I do? How much am I supposed to spend? What is good? Like, what's your thoughts on this?
So I think that it really is. I think people are waking up to the accessibility of antiques now, that it's not just kind of like for these, hoity-toity, legacy families. I think that antiques can be accessible to anybody now, especially with the use of online auctions and Facebook Marketplace. And I would say for my biggest tip is to train your algorithm for Facebook. And like, what do I mean by that? It's like, search certain keywords every day. And I hate to say that I go on Facebook Marketplace every day, but I kind of do. And even if I'm not in the mood to shop, I just kind of go and, I'll search, like, for instance, some of my favorite keywords are antique oil painting or designer curtains, because a lot of times you can get great fabrics, because fabrics are so expensive secondhand that people just don't want anymore. I'll say like antique this or English country this or antique vase. So as soon as you continue to search that, and then you go through the list and start to favorite things, even if you have no interest in purchasing them, favorite them, because then your Facebook algorithm will get to know you and what you're looking for. And another thing is to expand your radius in searching, because I'm sure in the UK they have it as well. But in America, we have different companies that now ship for Facebook Marketplace. So if I am located in New Jersey and I see something that's down in Virginia or down in South Carolina, I'm still able to get it. Don't limit yourself by your radius. I happen to be very lucky, and on the East Coast, we have a lot of antiques here because this is where kind of our original history is for America. But if you're talking about somebody in California, in Utah, on the West Coast, their antique well is dry. It's not a big market for antiques out there. And so especially if you're in a place that is a little bit low on history, especially in America, broaden your search. And then also another tip is Etsy. Etsy is incredible. They have tons of antiques, and they're not as expensive as you would think. I've gotten some of these oil paintings from like Holland, from UK, from England, Ireland. So there have been a lot of pieces that I've gotten from abroad as well. So don't rule out Etsy when you're looking for antiques. And then make sure that if you're in the right environment, don't be afraid to bargain and haggle a little bit. Say, especially on Facebook Marketplace, I would never pay unless it was something that I knew was incredibly undervalued. I would pay right then and there for it. But don't be afraid to negotiate. This is all about people that are looking to obviously sell something to get it moved and get it to another house. And make sure that they know you're serious when you're on Facebook Marketplace. And then if you're on online auctions, try to look for homes that are not so grand. The grand homes are going to be popular and they're going to have lots of interest in them. For us, like it's Greenwich, Connecticut, or all these like more larger estates outside of New York City and Long Island. But don't be afraid to go to the smaller homes. And sometimes there are smaller homes that have really good finds, and that's where you're going to get the best prices.
I love that you can just tell the experience there. You're like, okay, here we go. Yeah, I know this. I know.
Yeah. How do you know why somebody spends too much time online?
What is your favorite app? It's like Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, God. We got a lot of them.
But I wonder if you walk into, say, an auction and you kind of think, I'd quite like to get, a painting and maybe a chest of drawers and whatever. Do you ever get completely like sidelined into this beautiful, like, say, chair that you don't need or whatever, or like, how do you kind of keep focused when you don't actually know what you're going to go into? That's the joy of it, is you don't know what you're going to find, but also the stress is, how do you even like create what you want to see and find when you don't know what's going to be there?
So for me, I don't love to go to actual places to shop. And that sounds crazy, but it's for that exact reason. I really, of course, there are estate sales and people open their homes, or you go to an auction house and you see everything. I get very overwhelmed because you see everything and you want everything. And of course, I don't have an unlimited budget. You go there with a certain price that you're willing to spend, or a certain piece that you had in mind. And that's why I love Facebook Marketplace. And that's why I love online auctions, because I can preview their catalog. I can say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And it keeps me focused. It's like, I can't be a kid in a candy store. And as much as I love to let myself go and be a kid in the candy store, it's not productive. It's actually counterproductive because I'm too overwhelmed and too, drawn to everything. So that's why, unfortunately, I like to do more things online than in person for that exact reason.
Yeah, everyone can attest to feeling a bit overwhelmed by having too much choice. So that is another very good tip. And if you would look at everything that you've got in your house that you've bought secondhand, what is the standout thing that you're most pleased about and why?
Oh gosh. That's like asking me to pick a favorite child.
I'm not going to ask you that one.
Yeah. Or a favorite animal. I think that, oh my gosh. Listen, I love a lot of my different oil paintings and things like that. And I have certain ones that I'm especially drawn to. And another part, obviously, is the hand painted mural, but that's not really something that we found. I would have to say it would probably be the easel that I have in my living room that I have my TV on. I don't know about in England, but right now they're very hot in America. I think people have caught on to trying to hide their TV in the living room. And antique easels are really hard to find. And if you can find one, they're like $1,000. This one we found in somebody's basement, and it was like $200. And so we are really proud of that. And I think it really completes the living room. And I keep turning my head because I'm looking at it, but I think it really completes the living room. I'm like, I love you. But I think it really works really well in the living room. And this room was by far the hardest room I've ever had to design. It really tried my soul for so many different reasons. And so I think that I'm super happy with the way it came out finally. And I feel like I can close this chapter of this living room and then move on to like the kitchen and different projects. But having that easel was part of helping me close the living room chapter. That was a torture on my soul for many years.
And how do you plan it? Say you have this living room. Do you look at antiques first and get inspiration, or do you kind of sit down with a list of things that you'd like and you plan it and then look from there?
Honestly, it kind of both ways, right? Like we had to pick a room color, right? And sometimes I do regret going with a cream white on these walls. I go back and forth. Should I have chosen a really pretty blue or something a little bit more English country? And we had a painter and we needed to make a choice fast. And so we went with a cream. I knew I didn't want a stark white. And I think that it actually works really well on the backdrop of these bold gallery walls. So that was something that we kind of fell into. And then we had all of these paintings, and it was kind of like, well, where do we put all these paintings that we've collected in a mass because we just enjoy it? And it turned into, let's try a gallery wall. But oh no, we have these moldings. Like, what do we do with the moldings? And let's just hang them up on top of the moldings and see how it works. And we ended up liking them. So I think a long-winded answer to your question is that it works both ways. There's a little bit of planning, but certainly maybe it's less than, not both ways. Maybe it's more 80% winging it. And I don't want to say winging it, but it's kind of, if you buy things that you love, they will always feel right in your home. If you are drawn to them, if you like them, if, I'm not talking about buying a 20-foot couch or sofa and putting it in your living room. That's small. That seems unreasonable. But for the most part, if they fit your aesthetic and they fit size-wise, then it's going to make sense somehow.
And I think there's something like quite poetic about gathering things around the world from wherever you travel, picking up things that you really like, and then you're sitting surrounded by all of your lovely things that someone might walk in and say, well, why did you pick that? But to you, it's so treasured.
Right.
And you
I could tell you where that one's from. I could tell you where this is from. And I think that it sounds really goofy for me to be like, oh my gosh, where is this one? Do you want me to tell you? But I think it's because we're so proud of the treasure hunt that we did. And every piece does mean a lot to people like, me or others who curate their homes with Facebook Marketplace and antique shops. It really is about the story and the journey that you've brought back to your home, which is very much like many of your English country estates, all of these pieces have been handed down from families or from, different people bringing them in, or the travels that they used to bring back. And so, it's a lot of fun. And I think the big caveat that most people don't like in our, 2024 is that it takes time. Nobody wants to have, this living room took over a year to put together. And most people want the living room out of the box and done and checked off and moved on. And that's where the tricky part is.
Yeah, exactly. What's the furthest that you have traveled in distance to go and collect something that you've loved?
So, car ride, I would say my husband is amazing. And I get very scared leaving the farm and my kids. I don't like to travel too far. I kind of have we call it the radius of love that I like to stay within my home. But my husband is amazing. And I'm so blessed that he loves antiques and collecting things as much as I do. And quite honestly, he loves that bargain. Like, he loves not paying retail for something. So he does tend to drive further. I've sent him probably about 2.5 hours away by car for something. We do have a big American pickup truck that helps with shipping and with moving things. And I would say that the farthest we've gone is that, listen, my husband and I met when we were very young. We met at 19 and we were married at 25, and we put each other through school, through medical school. He's now a physician, but we had to do everything ourselves. And so financially, traveling has been very not affordable to us until recently. And so we celebrated our big 40th birthdays with a trip to Paris last year. And so, of course, we could not go to Paris without going to the flea market. And so we did bring back an oil painting and a chandelier, and we put it in the overhead compartment. We threw out suitcases at the airport to get these antiques home. But again, it's a story that we have now put on our walls and have in our home that from our travels. And actually, currently, we are planning on traveling to Ireland and England, hopefully next summer, because I have to go visit my homeland at some point. My bones are calling me back.
You have to bring a few extra suitcases with you just to preempt. Just
like another 3 seats. I mean, I'm just gonna have to convince him to, I don't know. We're gonna need a lot of luggage for this trip.
I actually love that you're like, the oil painting, I can kind of understand, like, shape-wise, it's not terrible to travel back with. But the chandelier really does, it does tickle me.
Getting through French security when you speak no French, and they're putting it on the thing and it goes under the X-ray, and they look at us and they're speaking to us and we're like, we are the dumb Americans that are trying to bring home
I feel
a
like the
chandelier.
X-ray. Yeah, I didn't even think about the X-ray thing. You just have to stand
Yeah.
there like, yep, it's a
And it was
chandelier.
wrapped in a garbage bag. It literally looked like we were traveling with like a body trying to bring back to America. I mean, it was the most awkward situation you could imagine. We were holding everybody up, and then the flight attendants like shoving it up to get it into. It was
But
an interesting.
it looks beautiful, I'm sure.
And it looks great in the study now. So I mean, listen, we made it work.
Oh, incredible. I actually love these stories. And that's like the whole sentiment of it, though. You know, it's not just a chandelier. You say, well, do you remember that time we had to convince like
Yeah,
French security to let us through the
that
airport
we
with
weren't
that?
mass murderers and carrying back body parts in this like trash bag that looked terrible. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's definitely the charm of it. So, yeah, super interesting. I love talking about interiors, and I think it's so personal to people, and to just figure out what you actually like and what really just makes you feel at home, what makes you feel comfortable, what
And I
surroundings
think,
make you feel relaxed.
I think that's the biggest thing too, again, is making sure that not to be scared to step out of the comfort zone. We love IKEA. Listen, I have IKEA pieces too upstairs for my kids, but don't be afraid to show who you are in your home, and curate a home with things that you love. Each piece should be something you love. I think the idea of now going into a home goods store and just throwing things into a shopping cart so you can get your living room decorated is so sad to me. Like, show bits and pieces of who you are. Of course, shop at Home Goods if you need, or if you don't have time, but make sure that inject parts of your personality and who you are as a family, as a unit, into your home.
Absolutely. So, what's next in the house? Have you finished it, or have you got some more projects
No,
lined up?
there's so many. That's the really tricky part with curating a home, is that it takes so much time. But the kitchen is up next. We've started bit by bit, and the next big section of it is going to be a butler's pantry in the kitchen. And so, I can't wait. We are taking this very American large dark kitchen, and we're going to turn it into something much more farm-like, serene, light and airy. We're taking all the upper cabinets down and just paring it down to what it would naturally have been in an English country home. So I actually have to come in person to England and do my research. I've told my husband.
Incredible.
It's my trip.
Yes, I feel like that is fair. You're just taking it
Yes.
seriously.
I need to do research. So we just have to get onto a plane and go across, to go do some research.
Amazing. And if people want to follow you online and keep up to date with your kitchen renovations and what you're doing in the house, where should they go?
So I have several accounts you'll find me on. I have my Instagram, which is Caley Svensson. Very simple, my first and last name. I do have a TikTok account, which is Caley Svensson as well, but that's more of a personal weight loss journey one that I recently lost 100 pounds and gotten healthy. And so I put it on TikTok because none of my millennial friends, were on TikTok at the time. And now apparently everybody is on TikTok. But my TikTok account itself is Svensson Interiors for the home things. So I have a couple. But Instagram is really where you'll find a lot of the interior decor.
Amazing. Well, I will link those below so people can check them out
I
and see what you're
appreciate
up
that.
to. And thank you so much, Callie, for coming on today. I loved our conversation. Super interesting. And I just love the passion that you have for your interiors as well.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think that in America, we are envious that you guys have so much history and so much love in all of your homes. And, I think that it's just trying to recreate that love and that passion here in America, just our own little story and our own little niche here. So.